Sell your brain and brawn to the highest bidder, but never put a price tag on your heart and soul. ISIS is looking for ChatGPT 5. 30 years from now, they will be national champions. Wars are the consequence of human stupidity. They do think long term. And therefore, in our case, when the Prime Minister talks of Amrit Kal, what is he saying? In my view, he's saying World War I being repeated, trench warfare.
The geopolitical tensions are at all-time high, and there are many reasons to it. But one of the key factors to the change in the power dynamics could be the rise of artificial intelligence and the uncertainty it brings with it. I had the pleasure to interview Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, who is currently the honorable member of the UPSC, brings with him a wealth of experience in strategic thinking and military affairs. We spoke about geopolitics and the change in the power dynamics and the technological advancement. This episode is not to be missed. Stay tuned for my conversation with Lieutenant General Raj Shukla. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode. Today we have a very special guest with us, Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, retired Army officer, and he's currently an honorable member of the UPSC. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Shivam. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for being a part of this. I really appreciate it. I would like to start this conversation with a very crucial subject, that is geopolitics. And when I hear the word geopolitics, the first nation that comes to my mind is China. What do you think, sir? How does the globe perceive China at the moment?
I think China is a very serious player. It is, of course, the primary challenger to the superpower that we know, USA. And it has come to this place at a time when the world order is being reordered in significant ways. So to understand China, I think we could just spend a couple of minutes on how the world order is changing. But that's the way I see it.
Right.
In some ways, the world seems to be on an edge, on a powder keg. Look at the conflicts that are taking place. So there's a very famous American thinker, Walter Mead, who said that in 2014, we entered the pre-war era. And see why he says it. Look at the conflicts: Georgia, Crimea, Nagorno-Karabakh, Kosovo. Europe thought it was going to live in prosperity and peace. It is only the Asians and Africans who will fight. They are now in a territorial conflict. It is World War I being repeated, trench warfare. They never thought they will get to it. Look at West Asia. Jake Sullivan, the American National Security Advisor, I think a week before 7th October said, while surveying the world, that there are worries here and there are worries there, but the Middle East is taken care of. Look what happened. While these events may seem unpredictable, there has been a trend, and that is why he calls it a pre-war era. There is the British Chief of General Staff, a very thoughtful general called Patrick Sanders. He was here for the IPAC last month. And in a conversation, he was saying that this is the war generation, not pre-war, war. Now, I don't want to sound alarmist, but that does seem to be the trend. And why is it happening? You see, look at this. In my view, there is the global West, a country of about 50 countries led by USA, Europe. There is the global East, led by China, a country of about 25 challengers. So China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, a couple of countries in Latin America and Africa. The global East is challenging the global West, in terms of the world order that the world has been used to all these years. And in doing so, China, while it leads the global East, is also trying to be the leader of the global South, which is 120 countries. Now, these 120 countries, but 60% of global growth comes from the global South. And what should worry the global West is that many of these 120 countries are pivoting to the global East and not to the global West. So they are saying that, when we get aid from America, we also get a whole lot of preaching and value stuff and all. China doesn't do that to us. They give us what we want, infrastructure, this, that. So these are some of the conversations. Also just see, China in PPP terms Its economy is already larger than USA. In nominal terms, it is 70 to 75% of the Americas. The Soviet Union at its peak never exceeded 40%.
But that's all thanks to US again, right? China has grown because of the support of the US.
Yeah. So they got them into the world order or into the economic system post WTO and all that. But this is the current reality. In technology, in many areas, China leads the Americans. Electric vehicles, renewable energy, which is, these are going to be the metrics of globalization 2.0.
Even semiconductors for that matter.
Semiconductors, low and advanced semiconductors, and that's why the Americans have, come in with the CHIPS Act and all that. The point is that they are a very serious contender, far more serious than the Soviet Union ever was.
True.
And therefore, we are in a very critical phase of our history, because this contest between the Americans and the Chinese is going to have far graver consequences. The Americans, the West has been talking of, there's a very famous term, I think it's once again Jake Sullivan, or was it Antony Blinken, who said, small yards, high fences, which means we will have a small yard, a few countries with the best technologies, create a high fence around these technologies, and with this kind of technological equipoise, rule the world. China is saying, small yard, big world. We will also get ascendancy in these technologies, but we'll share them with the global south. Now, whether they do it or not is a different matter. This is how the ideological battle is being pitched. One of the reasons why Xi has come down heavily on people like Jack Ma and all, he says, listen, your scientific prowess, especially of the youth, should not get wasted in TikTok algorithms and video games. Use that for the most serious issues, hypersonic, so and so and so and so. And since this cannot be demand driven, it has to be supply driven, and therefore state intervention. Now, I'm not saying that China will succeed in all that it does. Also, we must acknowledge that America is a comeback nation. It has been challenged many times in the past by Japan, so on. It has always come back. But the advantages once America had, innovation. I mean, the Americans were great innovators. Today, China is an equally good innovator. In some ways, if America has become a plutocracy, China is a meritocracy. Xi got admission into the Chinese Communist Party in his 11th attempt, which means 10 times he was rejected. There's a lovely conversation between Kishore Mehbubani and one Chinese researcher, or a researcher of Chinese origin in America. And she says, sir, today I'm doing well, but at one time I was extremely depressed. So Kishore says, why? A bright girl like you, why should you be depressed? And she says, sir, 8-9 years back, when I finished my high school, I was second. And so I was depressed. He says, second in all of China, high school? He said, yes, if you are second, you don't get membership to the Chinese Communist Party. So it is a meritocracy, it is innovating. In 37 out of 44 technologies today, AI, robotics, many of their subsets, China is leading, not in AI itself, but in many other technologies. So it is a very serious contender. So my basic point is that do not dismiss China in stock phrases, autocracy, so it will not do well, its political system will collapse. And today China is in deep trouble. Unemployment, 30%, real estate collapse, all the problems in the rocket force. So it was also going through a lot of challenges. It is very difficult to say at this point who will emerge as number one, who will emerge as number two, but there is a grim contest. Nations are making their choices. Just let me make 2 points. After the Ukraine conflict, 170 countries in Latin America, Africa, and other places did not join the Russian sanctions against Russia. So they either hedged or they were on Russia's side. So we should not be under this false impression that the Western global narrative is dominating. It may not be. The second point is the consequences for India. While a unipolar world has never been in our interest, so a world dominated by America is not something that we ever wanted. But if it gives way to a unipolar Asia, which is dominated by China, it could be worse. So we have to be very alive to the realities and make strategic adjustments. So I'm saying China is a
It's a strong threat.
power to reckon with. It would be unwise to underestimate it.
Right.
As we should not overestimate it. And also see how the world is changing. There was one time when Bill Clinton said it's the economy stupid, meaning that only the economy matters. Today, I think national security is, look at Ukraine,
Right.
West Asia, it could be Taiwan next. 2024 is a very critical year. Elections in India, elections in Taiwan, elections in USA.
The US as well.
Could these be distractions which China could take advantage of? At Filoli, he reassured the world that it's not going to be 27. It's not going to be 2035. He may well be meaning it. But he also reassured the world that he would not militarize the South China Sea. What did he go and do? So these are those imponderables. But it does seem that there is a new contest, global West, global East, global South. Let me make two more points. Look at how the singularity of American hegemony is being challenged. They say that if the Chinese mind, or if the productivity of the average Chinese mind becomes even 25% of the productivity of the average American mind, China's GDP will be larger.
Yeah.
India, they say that if the productivity of the Indian mind becomes even 50% of their Indian counterpart in USA, I'm not saying others, Indian counterpart in USA, our GDP will be $25 trillion. There are opportunities, there are challenges, there are threats. So this is no longer an American world.
Right.
It is being challenged by various players. It could be that China falters, India rises.
True.
It could be that India falters, China rises. But it is a grim world.
Right.
And all I would say is that we must be objective. And the last point that I would like to make, the connection with this economy, national security. I'm not saying that, we should jackboot around the world or wars are the future. I'm not saying that at all. But what is becoming a metric of power is your ability to convert your economic surpluses into various metrics of hard power. And that doesn't mean the military, it means military, defense, technology. The aggregate of this is now defining power, not the economy alone.
Right.
So these are some of the changes that we might like to take note of.
So that is why I asked you when I thought about geopolitics, my first question was on China for a reason, because it is important to understand the vision of China. What do you think China's vision is at the moment? I mean, it's a long-term vision, but how do you think that looks like?
You see, today there's this whole debate in India that should we make a strategy? What should it be like? Of course, I mean, if you make a strategy, nothing like it. But look at the Chinese. The strategy of the Chinese has been in the heads of their generals, their top bureaucrats, their politicians for years. This is what the 100-year marathon is. I mean, that is what amazes me, and that is what we should take note of. Sometimes in the 50s, Mao and Chow Enlai, they would go to the Americans, I think Roosevelt and somebody else, and say, listen, we want to become like you. Just give us some time. The Communist Party will become democratic. It will become like you. Give us money, give us your technology. And what do they go and do? They use the hide and bide to draw level with the USA. And now they are saying, no, the Marxist-Leninist system is the one that we will follow. But to do it from the Chinese perspective over a 100-year period, and they've had great disappointments. Mao's Cultural Revolution, this, that. Deng was a severe critique of it. He said, we lost 30 years in doing that. But to sustain it, and look at how sharply they use opportunities. They were delighted when USA got entrapped in Iraq and Afghanistan. So they said, oh, here's our opportunity. Even as the Americans are trapped there, we will grow our strategic military prowess. And today in many areas, look at their long-range precision system, their rocket force and all, that is challenging the American ability to project power into the Western Pacific. So look at them, those 100 years, that's the long-term thing. It could also be that a lot of that is fluff, exaggerations and social media fluff, many of their issues.
Yeah.
But we must appreciate the fact that they do think long term. And therefore, in our case, when the Prime Minister talks of Amrit Kal, what is he saying? In my view, he's saying These are 25 critical years. They also have an economic logic. Look at the demographic dividend. If you don't use it intelligently in the 25 years, you will grow old before you grow rich. So this Amrit Kal and this Vishwa Guru, make use of it with greater resolve, speed, and scale. The country should sense this, that these are our 25 years, a moment like never before. And we must step up the game, speed and scale in various areas. See, in many areas, it does seem to be India's moment.
Yeah.
You look at our DPI, digital public infrastructure, we've done wonders. Look at the way we are on top of terror. There was a time when रोज bomb फटता था,
हाँ जी.
फटना बंद हो गया. This is our moment, but it is not a done deed. So if this kind of grips the Indian nation, yeah, we have an equal opportunity. But this is going to be a very, very grim contest in my.
So are you connecting it to utilizing efficiently the youth population?
Of course, yeah, I mean, that's one of the areas where we have an advantage, say, demographic dividend. Today, 141 crores, we are larger than China. Much of this population is young. China faces very adverse demographics. Chinese population is estimated to be halved by the end of the century. So they have a lot of adverse metrics also. But in terms of, delivery, one thing that we should be very honest about. Why should a communist country be better than us in thinking? Somebody said, closed society, open minds. Open society, closed minds. So I'm saying this is India's moment. It is a never like before moment. A lot of things, there are a lot of tailwinds. There are also headwinds. We should intelligently adjust our power so that we make use of the tailwinds and don't get adversely affected by the headwind. That means a lot of hard work, speed and scale. We need to step up the game in smart ways. And look at this, this remains one of the puzzles. If I was in Beijing and I wanted China to be, say, the number one in the world or whatever, it would make a lot of sense for me to align with India, to befriend India.
True.
So that I can take care of the Americans. It remains a mystery as to why, despite all the outreach and urgings from our side, Prime Minister Modi and Xi have met 18 times.
Yeah.
Why should China look for ways to keep India strategically imbalanced, to not let peace and prosperity reign?
Do you think Pakistan has a notion on that?
I don't know. I think it is just sheer balance of power. Balance of power says one tiger on a hill. On the Asian hill, there can be just one tiger. There can be two tigers on either sides of the slope. But somehow the Chinese don't seem to adjust to that.
Is there an insecurity from China, from India?
I can't. I can't pinpoint it, but I think this whole Chinese worldview, of Middle Kingdom, which is, that they are the heavens above, China is this Middle Kingdom, and all the barbarians below. So India is not one of us. It cannot claim equality. And it is also one of the principles of balance of power. Look at America. What does it do? It doesn't tolerate a hegemon in America. In the American continent, no hegemon. Why did it intervene so aggressively in Ukraine? Because there should be no hegemon in Europe, not Russia. Why is it so bothered about Western Pacific? Why is it projecting power from the American mainland all the way to Taiwan? Because they want to tell their treaty allies and all that, listen, when you are in trouble, we'll come to your rescue and not China. So nobody in balance of power tolerates a hegemon, at least if they can help it. That is the only reason why China and India should not be at peace. Or is not at peace. Look at how they practice deception. So 1989, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi travels to Beijing. It's a successful visit, and after that you have a set of those agreements, peace and tranquility, confidence and building measures. As India was looking for peace along the LAC, China was building this infrastructure behind. People would question, they would say, and some of our guys also would say, the primary strategic orientation is Taiwan. It is not really India. These, in retrospect, to me, seem to be distractions. They always made up their mind that even as Taiwan may be a primary strategic orientation, They would build military power in what is now Western Theatre Command. And suddenly, one fine day, they violate all those agreements. There is no logic. They dispute. I mean, China has settled its disputes with so many of its neighbors. In my view, it is not the LAC which is the problem. It is this desire which flows from a very strong strategic rationale of keeping India imbalanced. It is power. It is not other drivers. So if China has decided that there will be only one tiger on the hill, if there will be one hegemon in Asia, now look at the challenge. For the first time in history, you had the world's two largest economies in PPP terms, the one number one, one number three, growing in close proximity without the benefit of the Himalayas as a barrier. Communications has breached it. No natural buffer like Tibet. So our geostrategic trajectories are bound to clash. The only way that clash will be peaceful is if we successfully deter China, which means be strong strategically and militarily. And therefore, when people say, defense costs money, I always say deterrence is costly, but wars are costlier. Ask the Ukrainians. Is it better to spend on deterrence or to spend ultimately on war? So in my view, if you ask me, these trajectories are bound to clash. The only way to keep them peaceful is to radiate very strong deterrence. And if you radiate strong deterrence, China is a smart customer. It will back off. So in that sense, we have to grow our deterrence by an order of magnitude in many ways.
You spoke about war. I firmly believe that wars only benefit defense manufacturers. And that's why there are so many wars happening. What do you think about that, sir?
So I'm saying that the smartest way not to have wars is to invest in deterrence. Wars are the consequence of human stupidity. Should not have wars. But wars, you will not have wars not by hope. You will have wars by putting in a succession of measures which deters. Now, see, it is just not a function of economics. Let's look at this, what I call a symmetric addressal. America's defense budget is 3 times that of China.
Yeah.
China's defense budget is 3 times that of India. Why is it that Beijing causes displacement anxiety in Washington? We don't cause similar displacement anxiety in Beijing. All these other issues, cultural transitions, theatre commands, long-range deterrence. So this, you have no option but to invest in these measures of deterrence. But in the longer span, when you invest in deterrence, you will save what you might ultimately spend on war. So I'm making precisely the opposite argument. I'm saying smart militaries don't fight wars. They deter wars. So wars are a consequence of human stupidity. When you are naive, wars will result. India has got 2 grand ideas to guide us. One is, of course, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is one world, one earth, one family. Equally, Swami Vivekananda warned us. He said that the world is but a gymnasium where nations come to make themselves strong. Indian strategic philosophy should stand on these 2 pillars. Of course, the world will be one family, but also when you realize that it is a gymnasium. So it should be a smart convergence of these 2. It is not a defense versus, that famous guns versus butter. That's, I think, a stupid debate. It is guns and butter.
So India has a lot of religious and mythological scriptures to learn from. Is there any particular scripture that you have in mind that we could imbibe more in our culture, in our geopolitics, in our defense strategy?
So I'm not very well read on religious scriptures, but civilizational wisdom, I can give you a few examples. So look at the clarity. Henry Kissinger passed away two days back. Now, he was the ultimate realist who said, that if your foreign policy is guided unduly by moral principles, you will neither get morality nor get security. So, realism in foreign. But see, if he was an advocate of realism in foreign policy, and he's, I think, a beacon, the touchstone. Look at Chanakya. If you want to see clarity in realism, what does he say? He says, "Agar शास्त्र को भूलोगे, तो अपनी संस्कृति खो दोगे." अगर शस्त्र का त्याग करोगे तो राष्ट्र ही खो दोगे. Brilliant. What is he telling
Beautiful.
you? What do the Chinese do? They always studied Western doctrines. They never forgot the wisdom of Sun Tzu and Confucius. Why should we not delve into our cultural wisdom? Here, moment you speak culture, it gets misconstrued as religion.
Religion, yeah.
So I'm just saying wisdom. Look at Guru Tegh Bahadur. Guru Tegh Bahadur said, "Bal hoye, bandhan chute, sab kuch lage upay." Which means, when strength accrues, shackles snap. Every move seems a stratagem. Look at China now. वो जो करता है, the world wonders. They have accumulated power, and the world is wondering. So, power in that sense, benign power, responsible power. But power not to jackboot around the world, but to keep your enemies off. Guru Tegh Bahadur, Chanakya. I've quoted Vivekananda to you. So, this kind of civilizational wisdom is extremely important, and it must be repurposed to modern realities.
Right.
I'm not saying fight the way Chanakya said. I'm saying go by his philosophies. And of course, a modern military has to be modern. It has to have long-range precision. It has to have AI. It needs to have chips. But how are they in conflict with the cultural wisdom? In India, these debates get misconstrued. You know, like Clausewitz. Now, Clausewitz was a brilliant guy. He was British, he was brilliant. But Clausewitz always said, trickery, these are weapons of the weak. Sun Tzu says they are weapons of choice. Our own texts, I think it was the Yuddha Kundam, which says, Sam Dam Dand Bhed, which says that in the international sphere, national interest by means fair or foul. So we must revisit some of these, what I call shibboleths. We say India has never been expeditionary. Really, what was the Ashwamedh Yagya all about? So you send a horse, which was to establish your power at increasing distances. Maharaja Ranjit Singh ruled Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Hari Singh Nalwa. So I'm not saying jackboot around the world, but we should look at your Prime Minister. Look at his address to the Combined Commanders Conference in 2014-15. He says the Indian military must be prepared to defend Indian citizens and Indian interests across the globe. Which means that you have to develop those capacities. Those capacities don't come in a day, they come in decades. So I'm a big advocate of revisiting some of the modern shibboleths in the context of our very rich civilizational wisdom.
You very nicely said repurposing these wisdom could help us get to a better stage.
Of course, to modern realities,
You also spoke about Prime Minister Narendra Modi. How do you think his stand has been on the map of geopolitics? How do you think we have been reacting to a lot of situations and crises that have happening all over the world?
I applaud a lot of what he has done, and I'll give you reasons for it. I think before he became Prime Minister, he once was asked how will he look at Indian foreign policy, and he said, "Na aankh utha ke, na aankh jhuka ke, aankh mila kar baat karenge."
Beautiful.
And then he has resourced that. Let me tell you how he's resourced it in the strategic military field. So the CDS DMA, people don't understand. CDS DMA has been given to us by this government and of course the Prime Minister, is a game changer. It is more powerful than America's Barry Goldwater Nichols. What is it telling you? It is telling the armed forces, listen, please think for yourself. You have a role in strategic policy making, of course, within the bounds of civilian control. Yeah. He's also said, that we've had a lot of valor, we've had a lot of good combat tradition. We now need thought leaders who will drive change through the national security system. This is the change that we need. National. This is significant. These new normals in our strategic outlook. Balakot, Kailash, they send very strong messages of deterrence to the adversaries. That listen, if you mess with us, we also can mess with you. True. We are responsible, but these are the changes. Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense, Atmanirbhar in defense. You see, technological self-reliance was always a major factor with us. Yeah. What this Atmanirbharta has done, it has built on what has happened in the past. And it's not, that national security was not given any space before, certainly not. But it has evolved more remarkably. Atmanirbharta in defense. I'm paraphrasing him once again. He says, the purpose of Atmanirbharta in defense is to release the forces of innovation, energy, and enterprise from the scourge of process and procedure. Startups, private sector. When Tata does a deal with Airbus, it challenges HAL as a monopoly. Is it good for HAL? Of course it is. It is good for HAL, competition.
Yeah.
Startups. Third Eye Tech. It has got a contract or an award to build the target designator of the Predator.
Yeah.
There's another one, 114 AI, which has got an award to build the space awareness tool, AI-enabled space awareness tool with US Spacecom. These are great changes. Now the startups must be scaled up, and ultimately these startups will become what are called national champions. Bayraktar, the drone manufacturer in Turkey, has given unprecedented heft to Turkey. Boeing, Lockheed. So India it could become a defense player of great consequence in all these ways. I told you how he's encouraging the military to think in innovative ways,
Right.
to build all these kind of capacities. So what should be from the prime ministerial vision? We should look for a military which is joint, which is calibrated, which is optimized, technologically enabled.
And self-sufficient.
Yes, and ready. Now see, these are all one-word descriptors. They take decades to create.
True, very true.
We've been struggling to get joint for 30 years. Russia was this great, military, the leverager of the Gerasimov doctrine, did very well in Syria. Suddenly it was unready in the first phase of Ukraine. So these are huge challenges. So I think the vision of the Prime Minister is extremely significant, what he has done, but it's not a done deal.
Yeah.
On that vision, it is for the military to build, or the whole strategic military community. It's not the military alone. I mean, everybody has to step up. The PSUs, the startups, the private sector, it's a grim battle there. Look at, let's discuss private sector. Elon Musk, what is he? I sometimes wonder, is he CEO of Starlink or is he National Security Advisor? What happened in Ukraine? I mean, one fine day, the Ukrainians, I think it's an underwater drone or it's some kind of submarine laden with explosives, and they want to use it to target the Russian Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol. And as I think it is being launched, Musk gets a whiff of it, and he speaks to the Russians, or somebody in Russia who tells him, listen, if you do that, it's going to be escalatory. He just switches off the Starlinks, and Ukraine, that boat just sails harmlessly. And once this issue is discussed in American circles, the American says, Musk has Starlinks, where is the American Starlink?
Yeah.
And now I'm told he's making the Starlinks, the military version of the Starlinks for the American military. It's called Star Shield.
Yeah.
So look at the power of a startup. Look at the power of technology. Elon Musk, when he visits countries, I see him being received by Rishi Sunak, being briefed by Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah.
He is a startup.
True.
In our case, the DRDO could have done that. So you have to deliver, and startups, private sector coming into defense is extremely important, because if there's one domain which is even more complicated and sophisticated than any other domain, it's national security. It needs the best minds, the sharpest minds. So it is all these challenges which India is wrestling with, and I think the Prime Minister has given a very significant boost to both the direction and the thrust.
Right.
Now it's what we make use of it.
So you're saying boosting startups is very essential to grow as for a nation. Let's say you were given the power to make some policies in regard. What would these policies be?
So let me give you an example, personal example. So when I was the Director General Perspective Planning, Sameer Joshi, jo aerospace ka hai, he came to me with a project. And I didn't know how to help him. There was neither a policy, there were no funds, and I just heard him and I could do nothing. And then I go to our track, where by this time the startup policy and all is through. To cut a long story short, I remember we gave the first orders to Sameer Joshi. Today ask him, this is 200 crores or something, VC funded and all drones. Similarly, this Vinayak Dalmia, Vinder Kapoor, All these companies, they started like that. So we have devised issues for them. So I'm saying these startups have taken birth. Now, if you ask me what policy changes now, we must scale up these startups. These startups have to be scaled up first and then grow into these national champions.
But that can't be the motive of a nation. That has to be an individualistic performance and
So I'm making this point that we must encourage these startups to become scale-ups. Look at, no country does it. There is government assistance everywhere. In these new technologies which are going to, lead globalization 2.0, the Chinese have subsidized heavily. The Chinese government have subsidized heavily.
True.
Their energy, green energy, artificial intelligence, and they all are dual use. In response, look at what the Americans have done, the CHIPS Act, the IRA, which is what? Subsidy, protectionism. All of them nurse it. In our case, we have got stuck by this L1 business. This L1 business needs to be reviewed. If I know these are my 5 to 6 startups, through a very fair process, deep process, identify them on merit, and then handhold them, because they are competing in the globe. They will not be able to compete unless you handhold them. And if you handhold them, and that point that I made about 50% in the Indian mind, why do the Indians do so well in USA? Look at how the Americans have structured their system. So they take talent from all over the world. Elon Musk is South African, Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai. They are all working for the American system. So you get talent from all around the world. Use this talent to make wealth. Use that wealth for your $950 billion, 800 military bases, 11 aircraft carriers. Make sure the military protects your interests.
Okay.
And you were talking of culture. Our culture says what? Saraswati, Lakshmi or Durga ka samanvay, convergence. So our academia should do all the research. It should create the wealth. This wealth creation will be done also by startups and all. And use the wealth to nurse instruments of power. So in that larger philosophy, growing startups, getting private sector in, competing with our PSUs. Many of our PSUs can also be efficient. That whole ecosystem together. It has to be academia, high quality research, government handholding, elimination of bureaucracies, dated procedures. Not process, but outcomes. It can be done. Startups, private sector, we will have a very robust military enterprise. That military enterprise will not only help our military, it will also get in profit. Boeing gets profit for America. Look at Bayraktar. It has made Turkey a drone superpower. So if we stop looking at these things in silos, private sector, startup, government, what silos? All India, all Indians, all interests.
So you're saying creating an environment for startups
which is called civil-military fusion.
And represent India on the global map as well.
Absolutely. Unless you who will handhold these startups if not you? So what does the L1 thinks? L1 thinks says, listen, I am very distant from all of you. I will favor no particular startup. I will only fund the lowest, the startup which is L1.
Risk, no risk.
I'm saying you devise a system where you identify the most meritocratic startups, the most competent startups who will be able to compete in a global environment, handhold them. Who will handhold an Indian startup if you don't do it? In my view, that should be the next phase. And that will enable these startups to scale up. And 30 years from now, they will be national champions.
So, since we spoke about startups, I would like to connect this to the technological advancement. Where do you think startups needs to come up? If let's imagine we have some viewers who's thinking of starting a startup, and they would want to, connect the technology that's coming up. What would you suggest them? Like, what kind of technology should they invest in terms of a new business?
So see, the best way to see what technology is doing is to look at AI. I mean, AI is a tool to see what technologies can do. So, I mean, look at how amazing the growth of AI has been. Somebody said that, Einstein's IQ was 160. Chat GPT-4 is 155. Chat GPT-6 1 year from now will be 1550, 10 times.
10 times.
A 150-page book, I knew will take perhaps 10 days or 15 days to read. Given the memory that many AI instruments have today, they will read this book in a microsecond.
True, true.
When quantum comes along, and it's not very far off, quantum supremacy, they say that the Google Sycamore computer, it solves in 200 seconds what ordinarily, will take 10,000 years to solve. 10,000 years, 200 seconds, microseconds. So somebody said AI is, that puppy that you have got into your house who's billion times smarter than you. So today the problem is not how will we leverage AI. You better wake up or you will not be able to control AI. Now, this is what technology does. How is AI so significant or even more dangerous? It's a double-edged sword. It has a good end and it has a bad end. Now, good end means it will bring unprecedented prosperity. The way the funding is going, I'm told it's $25 billion a year, raw fuel. What will it result in? Economic rewards. I'm told by 2030, $25 trillion will be added to the global economy. $25 trillion. In the next 50 years, $100 trillion. So it's a $100 trillion economic opportunity. That's one part of it. And it is going to get unprecedented prosperity, new drugs, better quality of life. It's going to significantly change. Good edge, bad edge. Look at the problem. Let's compare it with nuclear weapons. So a nuclear weapon, no matter how potent, a global nuclear, thermonuclear war can destroy the world. But nuclear weapons could never make nuclear weapons. AI can generate more AI, more tools. So see what it will do. So the time now has come to see what aspects of AI we need to regulate actively. Make ethical AI profitable. It can be done. Ethical AI profitable. And therefore, what we saw, that London Safety Summit and the EU has come up with AI regulations. So the point, what do I make? I am saying AI is going to be game-changing. Humans have no option but to redefine the relationship with AI. Redefine your relationship with that puppy. And that redefinition should be that all good stuff, we will enable it, let it grow, and the bad stuff, we will curb. Now, it's not going to be easy because the problem with the bad stuff is that this bad stuff is also being driven by this big power competition. If I'm a strategic ideologue sitting in Beijing, what will I say? I'll say, I will leverage AI to create the bad stuff. I'll keep it with myself. I will only use it if the Americans use it.
True.
Americans are doing the same thing. Perhaps Indians will also do it. So today, there is no option. You cannot seed this space. You cannot say that I will not do AI because it is bad. You have to engage with it, because if you don't, your adversary will use it. So I'm saying both by way of moral counsel and economic opportunity, you have to engage with it. That's the first step. India needs to, where is our computing power? Where are our large language models? The Chinese today, I'm told 180 of them. The Americans are far ahead. We have to invest in these capacities, get AI prowess, develop these kind of strategies, philosophies, how to leverage good AI, how to control bad AI, just like we did in the past for nuclear agreements, so on and so forth. But there is no option now not to engage with technologies. Let me give you 2 to 3 examples of technologies. Americans got in the HIMARS in Ukraine. Very accurate gun systems. They created havoc. Kharkiv, Kherson, counterattacks, precision. Till some Russian video gamers learned how to fiddle with the GPS. And this very accurate, modern artillery system suddenly became an inaccurate mortar. Technology. Look at Starlinks. When the Russian cyber attack, by the way, contrary to popular impression, did very well. The Ukrainians didn't have internet. But here is this technological genius, Elon Musk. He gives you Starlinks, high bandwidth off-grid internet. What does it do? It enables Zelensky to communicate with global councils. It enables him to communicate for troop resolve, for street resolve, troop morale. It is also used for artillery targeting. Technology today is doing wonders. Look at what the Iranians have done. Their drones, country under sanction, they use these drones in Russia, master the inadequacies, plan how it will penetrate the Iron Dome, and use it on 7th October with telling accuracy. 5,000 rockets in 25 seconds. So technology, AI, robotics, quantum, blockchain, these are no longer things which you can just read out in fancy seminar speeches. They are impacting day-to-day fighting. They are impacting the squadron battle, the company battle. They will affect decision making. They will fasten the OODA loop. And of course, there is strategic AI based on large language models and so on and so forth. So thankfully, I mean, this is one of the points of that Atmanirbharta in defense. The Indian military today is engaging with technology hugely. Today, army commanders have got an innovation budget, they have got a technology budget, and they have an acquisition budget. It was not there many years back. As GeoCNC track, the first year I spent 7 crores. The next year I spent 155 crores. America, they picked the guy Craig Martel. What was Craig Martel doing? Craig Martel was driving machine learning in a cab company, Lyft, the American Lyft. He is taken and made Chief Data AI Robotics Officer in Pentagon. He's been brought to Pentagon not because of his prowess in military stuff, but because of his prowess in machine learning. So machine learning prowess will now sharpen the American defense enterprise. So technology is no longer an option. It is an imperative. If you don't embrace it, you're dead.
I feel AI as technology has been, in hindsight right now, there haven't been disclosure of what different nations are trying to create now. Do you think India is doing something like that as well? Like for example, how we hid ourselves trying to become a nuclear power. Is this something similar happening in the AI world as well?
See, AI is so challenging. We have to acknowledge that the real two AI superpowers are America and China. Yeah, America, is, of course, leads China. China is number 2. India is far down in the food chain. Where is our compute? Where are our large language models? I don't think they are there. So we have to invest heavily in this. And this is where I say the government should step in and compute large language models. You know, give these startups, pick the smartest startup in India and tell them, okay, this is your funding. What is $50 billion for a government? Give it, let them work on these large language models. So there are 2 phases. One is what AI which is available commercially, for example, Copilot. It can be used in defense, in the military. So one is what is commercial off-the-shelf AI to improve military prowess across domains. So in, say, reconnaissance, in, say, command and control, fire support, AI-enabled updates for precision, all that can be done. But then there is strategic AI. You have to have your own compute, your own large language models, so that you're not dependent. That stuff nobody will give you, not the Americans, nor the Chinese. Yeah. So that other part you have to develop yourself. Some of it may be happening, but if we have to be honest, I don't think it is on the same scale. So we have to really step this game up. Quantum. Yeah. So you have no option but to look at future technologies and invest in them. Because if you play catch up, you will be out of the game. And today, see, this is a different India. We are in the big power league now. We are number 5 economy, soon going to be number 3. We just have no option. We have to embrace these domains. So technology is a huge game changer insofar as India is concerned. We have to step up the game.
I want to stay back on artificial intelligence. What phase are we in at the moment as humanity, as together? What stage are we of AI we are in at the moment?
So, there's 2 to 3 things, I think. One is, the smart people, the nations which are smart, say US and China, and they embrace AI better, they will become gods. And there will be another generation, another lot which has not or does not embrace AI. They will be like animals. Sorry to use that very blunt comparison. This is what will happen. Look at this $100 trillion opportunity. It will only be leveraged by those who are smart in AI. We have to, when I said, redefine our relationship with society, let's not be hypocritical. All white collar jobs will go. So what are we doing for all that? I mean, many other nations are looking at reskilling in terms of AI. And across the age bracket, if you don't reskill yourself at 50, you lose your job. If you don't reskill at 40, you lose your job. So AI is going to be this great revolution. Look at what ChatGPT-4 has been done. Look at dangers. What if AI falls into the hands of bad state actors, non-state actors? In one way, the gap is not too different. For example, what has been released, open source models like ChatGPT-4 and what is closed source. I'm told the technological difference is just 6 months to a year. So even with commercial models, bad state actors can do a lot of bad stuff. AI being leveraged by Hamas, for example, their accurate rockets will become so accurate that they may hit the center of Tel Aviv. In human history, it is as significant as the printing press, as the Industrial Revolution. We must get that. It's just not another technology. So let me give an example. Printing press, I'm told, Turkey was this great prosperous nation. It did not embrace the printing press. The printing press was embraced, say, in London, Paris, and all that. And for whatever reason, the Sultan then decided not to. So they took 300 years to embrace the printing press. In those 300 years,
the world has shifted.
They were swept aside. So this is the significance of AI. It is a game-changing technology. Quantum, look at that example I gave you, 200 seconds, 10,000 years. So these things have to sink into us. And each time we say that, oh, it may not happen, it is some distance, it happens. It just happens. Look at ChatGPT-4.
But there'll be a lot of ethical considerations in terms of getting into this technology. And do you have hope in the humanity?
Yes, exactly.
And the kind of people?
I'm not an expert on this, but I've heard a lot of people. So there's one guy called Mo Gaudat. You read him.
Mo Gaudat.
So he makes a very good point. He says, of course. So one point he says is that make ethical AI profitable.
Yeah.
Which can be done. It is how you shift this whole equation of profit. He says, we made 3 mistakes, One is this whole business of coding. We put it on the internet. Or losing control of coding. Now AI can do coding.
Yeah.
Then you put it on the internet. We've given it to bad actors. But what he says we can do now, what is still in our hands is the data patterns, the data that you feed must be ethical. And he gives a good example. So he says, you see, you go to X or Twitter. So Trump makes a hateful tweet. When he makes a hateful tweet, somebody agrees with him, somebody disagrees with him. Number 3 agrees with the first commentator, number 4 disagrees with the second commentator. Number 5 abuses the first commentator, number 6 abuses the second commentator. What is AI doing? ChatGPT-4 is learning from this abuse, learns from a Trump tweet and its consequences. It will be of a particular ethical disposition. But if it learns from another set of tweets which are not abuse, it will become that kind. Now, why has Musk got it this Twitter, you will wonder? This is a digital gold mine. If you feed the AI models on good data patterns, you will get productive AI. So he says AI is informed by intelligence but driven by the data patterns. The data patterns are still in our hands. So it can be shaped in that manner. So I'm saying that we must redetermine our equation with AI and shape it in these sensible ways.
It is, unavoidable to get into the hands of someone who's got bad intentions. How do we safeguard that?
So therefore now that government regulation is coming in. The London Safety Summit, AI Safety Summit, there is still time where people are saying that you can still unleash the great innovative power of AI while constraining its harmful effects. So government regulation, examination of, so before an algorithm is released, it must pass through some regulation, just like you and me. a drug, it is tested by the drug controlling authority. So before an AI model, say ChatGPT 5, before it is released, it must go through a regulatory process. But don't get the old government regulation back कि कोई innovation ही ना हो. So that regulation has to be very carefully done. And by consensus it can, I'm sure if you say that, okay, there will be a global body, just like say the non-proliferation treaty or something, to make sure that bad AI is not released into the market, we can find ways, we can minimize the risks if nothing else.
No, but of course there are a lot of organizations like a terrorist organization, if they get their hands on something as powerful as artificial intelligence,
exactly. So
ASI for that matter.
So say Hamas is looking for ChatGPT 5, or say ISIS is looking for ChatGPT 5. Before releasing ChatGPT 5, we must make sure that there is a regulatory body which ensures that if the government of India wants it, the government of China wants it, government of USA wants it, it gets ChatGPT 5. Hamas is not given to ChatGPT 5. After all, you're releasing them. You're making them public. ChatGPT 4, that was a whole debate in OpenAI, or whether you should release it, to the public. This coding, make it public or retain it, keep it to a confined few. That is open source coding and
the API.
Closed source coding, yeah. So all those debates are there. But there is scope for regulation. That is what this whole London Safety Summit was.
Right.
It is late. There are problems. There are challenges. All nations may not comply. But you can certainly minimize the risk. It's just like nuclear weapons. The point in India is we should not. Ethical AI is very important, but where is your core competence first? Get your core competence, then you can talk of ethical AI.
Yeah.
In India, it is very likely that the ethical AI debates will get such prominence that they will grow when you have no competence. That should not happen. Get your competence going and then get the ethical AI debate, or at least concurrently.
We spoke about a lot of cons of AI and the impact that it could create. Let's talk about a few pros as well. When AI comes in, there'll be so much, we'll be able to predict any virus that would create, that we'll be able to predict a lot of things.
Of course, huge. All these are already all these search engines are already, good things that have happened with AI. Look at this, how powerful algorithms have become, how they are shaping geopolitics. I heard Elon Musk only say this. He said, TikTok, the algorithm will decide if it goes by numbers on TikTok. If there are 2 billion Muslim viewers and there are 20 million Israeli viewers on TikTok, the algorithm will work in such a manner, it will be shaped by those Muslim viewers to impact the Israel-Hamas debate. 2 billion versus 20 million, because the algorithm goes just by numbers.
Yeah.
It goes by numbers. So this is the power of algorithms to shape debates. It can be used, as I said, good edge, bad edge, but good, like I said, $100 billion raw fuel every year. Economic rewards, $25 trillion till 2030, $100 trillion next 50 years. Drugs, Alexa, search engines. This is all wonderful stuff. Translators. AI today, human speech.
Yeah.
They can improve on my speech. Why call them deep fakes? They've become deep reels. So a lot of good stuff. Drugs. They say you can change the structure of lithium. Green energy. So good AI endlessly. Any complex problem which you are solving in 200 seconds in a positive manner, AI is wonderful. If the humans are sensible, we will be into the next generation of human evolution. We'll be happier, we'll be richer, we'll be more prosperous. But that's not the way. The reality is that there will always be a few bad actors. The upsides are many. The downsides may be few, but they are more dangerous.
Yeah.
So you have to we must engage with AI. It'll take us, I think, a year or two to just develop an understanding of AI. And once
Similar
you
to
develop,
how internet came in and then we had to...
exactly, and then build these pros and cons. Look at the pros and cons, build in checks and balances, and hope like hell that the upsides will always exceed the downside.
Right.
Because if the downside exceed the upsides, you may not be having these debates. You may be gone in a thermonuclear war.
Yeah, it is a tricky situation, but we got to be hopeful and we got to look at the positive sides as well. So to end this conversation, I've got two personal questions that I ask all my guests. First question is, what is one book that you wish you would have read earlier in life?
There is no one book, but there is one philosophy I can tell you, which is, Mark Twain. Mark Twain was asked at one point that why was he so successful in life? And he said, listen, I always took great care never to let my schooling interfere with my education. So, there is this stuff you have to do on a day-to-day basis, what your curriculum demands of you, academic, college curriculum, what your work demands of you. Always find time to look beyond that, larger wisdom of engaging with people, looking around you. What will determine you is that wisdom, and not really your education and not really your schooling. We are all gauged by our schooling. Kitne mark aaye, 10th mein aaye, first try. But in the longer run, it is education which exceeds schooling. So in that wisdom, what is the foremost attribute that a person must develop? Not academic wisdom, not even academic excellence, perhaps not even education, but that larger wisdom.
The analytical mind.
Yes, it is wisdom, which is, people say that, common sense in large doses, in an uncommon measure is wisdom. At the end of the day, I'm a great proponent of wisdom. It is a very strange amalgamation of a whole lot of quality. A wise person is what you need.
True. Similar questions on the same line is, what is one advice you would give to a young Raj Shukla?
Okay, no matter what happens in life, technology and all that, you must constantly keep adapting to it. But there are some fundamentals. Fundamentals of, I'm a firm believer in being good, in being informed, in being diligent, in being hardworking. All these attributes are extremely important. People might tell you at a certain stage, oh yeah, be smart. Don't do this, be smart. But the shallow smartness never works. It has to be these substantive issues. For example, let me end with one quote, Let's say communication. So what is important in communication? Is it your ability to be glib, or is it your genuineness? Many people say, glib is more important, fashioning phrases is more important. But if it is not genuine, so, there was Ram Jethmalani who, in the context of communications, gave this quote. He says, Sitam ke daur mein wo ahle dil hi kaam aaye. Sitam ke daur means in times of grave challenges. Sitam ke daur mein wo ahle dil, it is the good-hearted, who proved useful. Jinhe naaz tha zuban par, wo to bezuban nikle. The sophisticated communicators suddenly lost their voice. So a good communicator is one who doesn't lose his voice in crisis.
Wow.
So I'm always so any skill that you take, it must have depth, it must have substance. Just being glib, just being fancy with your words.
And genuinity as well.
Genuineness, conviction. How do you value a human being? Once I walk out of this room, you will evaluate me for my genuineness, not for my being glib.
True.
In the long term, such evaluations are, of far greater consequence. Young Raj Shuklas must know, be good, excel. You will get mentors from unknown quarters. You will not even know that so-and-so mentored you, because there are enough people who appreciate.
Yeah.
See, I'm in the UPSC today. All these years, I have never seen, I won't say that humankind is entirely fair, but it is extremely fair. When somebody does well and he goes out, people say he was good. You will not know. How will you know? There's no way of telling you.
It reflects.
No, that is human nature. It is, first and foremost, it is fair. Of course, it will thereafter get, There are all kinds of trappings in what we call politics. It is essentially fair. So let me say this, sell your brain and brawn to the highest bidder, but never put a price tag on your heart and soul.
Wow.
So brain and brawn, your qualities that you have, you must leverage them. But heart and soul also matters.
Beautiful, sir. What great end to the conversation. So before we go, can I request, since Pentagon Press is celebrating 25 years, would you like to say a few words about Pentagon Press? And
Pentagon Press, you see, I've come into contact with Pentagon Press for the last 6-7 years, and I think they're doing a wonderful job in publishing, especially strategic military affairs. And I think your dad's done a great deal. You must take that legacy forward. And I have nothing but good things to say about Pentagon Press, and I wish you the very best. Because, ideation, as I said, remains so important. And just yesterday, I think I was reading, there was a quote of Plato, the great philosopher, who said, reading and writing is the geometry of the soul.
Right.
And reading and writing is what Pentagon Press enables. So it's a noble task. Wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for your kind words, sir. I really appreciate your time and support.
Thank you.
I took a lot of points from your conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you.